Have you ever wondered why modern tourists with high-tech equipment freeze in places where the indigenous people of the plains have lived for centuries? Imagine the endless snowy desert of the Great Plains, where the wind chills you to the bone and temperatures drop to -40 degrees. In such conditions, even the most prepared person would die within hours without a source of heat. However, the Lakota, Cheyenne, and other Native American peoples not only survived in this icy hell, but also slept comfortably. Their secret was not huge bonfires, as we are often shown in Hollywood movies, because an open fire inside a dwelling is more likely to suffocate you with smoke than warm you up. They used technology and knowledge that allowed them to turn the harsh cold into an ally, creating a microclimate where it seemed impossible. It was a complex system that included engineering solutions, unique material processing, and a deep understanding of the physics of heat transfer. Watch the video to the end to find out how an ordinary bison skin could work more effectively than a modern sleeping bag, and what an unexpected technique allowed them to stay warm even in the most severe frosts. What if I told you that everything you believed was wrong, and that the main source of heat was not external fire at all? We are used to thinking that the most important things for winter survival are clothing, shelter, and the ability to build a fire. But the peoples of the plains knew a much deeper secret. If the body generates enough heat itself, then even in harsh conditions it is possible to survive without thick skins and giant fires. They understood that warmth does not come from outside, but from within, and that the best heater is found in the human body. Therefore, winter food became an integral part of their defense against the cold. It was their main shield against winter. The first line of defense against the deadly cold was a unique diet that literally turned the human body into a living furnace. During the winter, the diet of the indigenous inhabitants of the plains changed radically, shifting almost entirely toward the consumption of huge amounts of fats and high-calorie foods. This was necessary to keep their metabolism at an extremely high level so that the body could warm itself from within and not waste energy. This diet was based on observations of nature and the experience of generations, as animals also stored fat before winter. People simply adopted this mechanism. Their bodies became resistant to incredibly low temperatures. The main food was pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried and powdered meat mixed with melted fat and sometimes dried berries. This product had tremendous energy value, providing the body with calories for many hours to come. Pemmican could be stored for years without losing its properties, making it the ideal food for travel, hunting, and winter journeys. It was so dense and energy-rich that a small piece could replace a full meal. This was an indispensable advantage for survival. Some families kept pemmican supplies as a strategic reserve. Eating fatty and high-calorie foods before bed triggered a process of thermogenesis that continued throughout the night. The body began to slowly burn fat, maintaining a stable body temperature even when the wind was howling or the frost was biting. People essentially fell asleep with their internal heaters turned on, which did not depend on fire or external conditions. This process was natural and safe, as the body used its own resources to generate heat. Thanks to this, people did not wake up every half hour from shivering. At night, they regained their strength instead of fighting the cold. For modern humans, such an amount of fat would seem impossible or even harmful. But for the inhabitants of the plains, it was a matter of survival. Their bodies were adapted to processing heavy food, extracting maximum energy from it to combat hypothermia. Over time, their metabolism learned to efficiently convert fat into heat, not just energy reserves. This allowed people to remain active in the cold, travel long distances, and hunt even in the coldest months. Winter did not paralyze their lives. It became just another challenge they were ready for. Unlike carbohydrates, which provide a quick but short burst of energy, fats provide a long and steady release of heat. This allowed hunters and warriors to sleep for several hours at a time without waking up from the cold or feeling sudden temperature changes. Fats created the ideal energy background, keeping the body in a stable state. This approach was both effective and simple. It fit perfectly into a nomadic lifestyle, where it was not always possible to count on a large fire. People simply used their own bodies as a source of heat. This approach required careful preparation of supplies during the warm season, when hunting was productive and meat could be dried in large quantities. Every kilogram of stored fat was literally worth its weight in gold, because in the winter months it turned into the equivalent of warmth and survival. Supplies were distributed among families so that no one would go hungry in the cold. Food preparation became a collective endeavor on which the fate of the entire tribe depended. Pemmican was stored in special leather bags to protect it from moisture and rodents. For people, it was a real winter energy bank. Without this internal fuel, no external shelter or skins could provide adequate comfort in extremely low temperatures. Without food, the body quickly lost strength, and the cold made any movement painful. Diet was the biological basis of their survival system, the foundation on which everything else was built. Clothing, tents, fur capes, and even the way they moved. By maintaining high energy levels, people could not only survive but also remain active. That is why nutrition was considered as important a part of preparation as hunting or building shelters. It is interesting to see how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, where there are also traditions of winter nutrition. Some countries emphasize fish oil, others dairy products, and still others meat and legumes. Each culture has found its own way, but the principle remains the same. To withstand the cold, the body must be prepared for it from within. Where are you from, and do you agree with the arguments presented about the role of fatty foods? Are you ready to learn the truth about how ventilation actually worked in nomadic dwellings? Many people mistakenly believe that a tipi is simply a conical tent made of animal skins stretched over poles. In fact, it is a complex engineering structure with a unique thermoregulation system that solved the problem of drafts and smoke. The secret lay in the use of an inner liner, or ozon, which was attached to poles inside the main covering. This liner created an air gap between the cold outer wall and the living space, working on the principle of a modern double-glazed window. Cold air entering from below remained in this gap and did not enter the living area. Thanks to this solution, a draft was created inside the tipi, which carried smoke from a small hearth directly into the smoke hole at the top. The air inside the dwelling remained clean and warm, and the walls did not radiate icy cold. The height of the insert was usually about 1.5 to 2 meters, which reliably protected sleeping people from drafts walking across the floor. This created a cozy space where the temperature was significantly higher than outside, even without a large fire. The outer covering of the tipi was sewn from many bison hides, which were specially treated with smoke to make them waterproof. Such leather did not stiffen in the cold and retained its elasticity, reliably protecting against wind and snow. The entrance to the tipi was always located on the east side to welcome the sun and avoid the prevailing westerly winds. The cone shape itself was perfectly streamlined, making the structure stable even in the strongest storms. The floor inside the dwelling was never bare earth. It was covered with a thick layer of dry grass, sagebrush, or willow branches. This provided powerful insulation from the frozen ground, which could have drawn all the heat from the bodies of those sleeping inside. Hard hides were laid on top of the plant bedding, wool side up, creating a warm and soft carpet. This multi-layered floor construction was critical for retaining heat in the lower part of the dwelling. In winter, the lower edge of the outer covering of the tipi was covered with snow or earth to completely prevent the wind from blowing in. The result was an airtight capsule, inside which the heat generated by people and a small source of fire was retained. Do you think this design can be considered a prototype of modern energy-efficient houses with double walls? Want to know a secret that will forever change your perception of blankets and sleeping bags? We are used to thinking that modern synthetic fillers are the pinnacle of technology, but the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains possessed a skill that was as effective as the best achievements of the 21st century. Their system of insulation for sleeping was thought out to the smallest detail and was based on a deep understanding of the properties of natural materials. The main means of nighttime rest were not just skins, but specially tanned bison robes with unique thermal insulation properties. Bison fur has a thick undercoat and long guard hairs, creating an air cushion that retains body heat and reflects the cold. However, the main secret lay not only in the quality of the fur, but also in the incredibly laborious process of tanning the skin, which not everyone knew how to do. The women of the tribe spent weeks processing each hide, transforming the rough flesh into a soft, almost fabric-like cloth. They used a method of brain tanning in which natural fats from the animal's brain were impregnated into the skin, making it flexible, durable, and resistant to moisture. This type of leather was windproof, did not harden in the cold, and retained its ability to breathe, allowing moisture to evaporate and not accumulate inside. This was critically important, as moisture could quickly cool a person down and lead to hypothermia. The delicate work required experience, strength, and precision of movement. So each craftswoman took pride in her creations. Such robes were valued no less than a hunter's weapons. Sleeping places were arranged in such a way that a person wrapped themselves in the robe with the fur inside, creating a closed and very warm contour. The wool came into contact with the body or clothing, instantly heating up and reflecting the heat back to the person, similar to the action of thermal underwear. The heat was distributed evenly throughout the space under the skin, preventing individual parts of the body from becoming hypothermic. This method ensured deep, restful sleep even in severe frosts when temperatures could drop below -30 degrees Celsius. This method of covering was more effective than most modern sleeping bags without artificial insulation. People essentially created their own miniature oven powered by body heat. On particularly cold nights, several layers were used. The bottom layer was laid with the fur facing up, creating a soft and warm bedding, and the top layer was laid with the fur facing down, turning the sleeping person into a well-insulated sandwich. This created a thermos effect, where cold air could not penetrate the thick skin and heat could not escape, remaining locked inside. This system not only retained heat, but also conserved energy, as the body did not have to expend extra calories to keep warm. Some families had entire sets of winter skins that had been collected over many years. This was an important part of preparing for the cold weather. An important point was that the skins were never washed in the way we understand it today, so as not to wash away the natural fats that protect against moisture and prevent rotting. Instead, they were regularly beaten in the cold to remove dust and snow, and smoked over smoke, which disinfected the material and repelled parasites. The smoke gave the skins a characteristic smell, which was considered a sign of quality and durability. This treatment also made the fur less attractive to insects. All this allowed the skins to serve for years without losing their properties, even in extreme conditions. The weight of such winter clothing was significant, which also played an important role. A heavy blanket fits snugly to the body, leaving no gaps for cold air to enter. This created a feeling of protection and security, as if the person were in a dense cocoon, sheltered from the outside world. The heavy weight also prevented sudden cooling when changing position during sleep. Many people noted that they slept especially soundly under heavy skins. This was an effect similar to modern weighted blankets. The only difference was that the skins provided not only psychological comfort, but also real protection from the cold. In addition to bison skins, soft and very warm skins of other animals, such as bears or wolves, were used for sleeping, especially when bison were unavailable. These materials were combined to create individual sleeping sets for each family member, depending on their age, strength, and habits. Bear fur retained heat for an incredibly long time, and wolf skins were light but dense. This combination made it possible to select the optimal set for any conditions. Families often kept skin sets that were passed down from generation to generation. If you enjoy learning about such forgotten technologies of the past, please like this video because it really helps the channel grow and allows us to share even more amazing discoveries with you. What if I showed you a time machine that would take us back to an era when stones replaced heating batteries? Instead of maintaining a dangerous open fire all night, Native Americans used the principle of thermal inertia. In the evening, before going to bed, they heated large stones in a fire, choosing ones that would not crack from the heat. These were usually dense volcanic rocks or river boulders, carefully selected and tested over time. These hot stones were then carefully carried inside the dwelling, using deer antlers or sticks as tongs. The stones were placed in special pits in the ground or simply laid out in the center, but not left exposed. They were covered with a layer of earth or sand, and then aromatic herbs such as juniper or wormwood were placed on top. This prevented direct contact with the hot surface and ensured a slow, even release of heat. Such an underground heater could remain warm until morning, warming the ground on which people slept. The heat rose from the bottom up, creating a comfortable temperature in the sleeping area, rather than under the ceiling. Sometimes smaller heated stones were wrapped in pieces of old leather or thick fabric. These improvised heaters were placed at the foot of the sleeping area to help warm the limbs and fall asleep faster. This technology was completely safe from a fire safety point of view, as there was no open flame inside the dwelling at night. People could sleep peacefully without fear that a spark from the fire would burn the skins or cause a fire. In addition, the absence of a smoking hearth kept the air in the dwelling clean and fresh, which was important for lung health. Smoke from an open fire in an enclosed space often caused eye and respiratory diseases. This method required a deep knowledge of the properties of various minerals, as an incorrectly chosen stone could explode when heated. Experience in selecting suitable heat accumulators was part of the knowledge necessary for living in the wild. The use of heated stones saved precious fuel, which was very difficult to obtain in winter. Wood was saved for cooking, and solid-state physics was relied upon for heating at night. Do you think this method of heating is more environmentally friendly and sensible than burning huge amounts of wood? Semi-nomadic or sedentary peoples, such as the Mandan and Hidatsa, built earthen houses for the winter that resembled underground fortresses. These structures were not just shelters, but true triumphs of engineering and thermal insulation, embodying knowledge of the climate, materials, and natural cycles. People used the earth itself as a natural covering material, understanding that it served as the best shield against the cold. Winter dwellings were designed for months when temperatures could drop to extreme levels. Therefore, every detail of the construction was carefully thought out, from the shape of the roof to the thickness of the walls. It was a house that blended into the landscape, becoming part of the earth itself. The frame of such a house was built from strong logs, which were prepared, cleaned, and treated in advance for durability. Dense layers of willow branches, dry grass, and reeds were laid on this skeleton, creating a flexible, shock-absorbing base. The entire structure was then covered with a thick layer of earth and turf, sometimes reaching a meter in the harshest regions. These layers did not just lie on top, but were tightly compacted, becoming a monolithic shell. The earth and turf reliably protected the house from wind, precipitation, and sudden temperature changes. This multi-layered structure turned the house into a giant thermos. For the local peoples, this was not just knowledge, but a tradition established by generations. Earth has enormous thermal inertia, heating up slowly and cooling down just as slowly, which is beneficial in a harsh continental climate. Thanks to this, the walls smoothed out not only daily, but also multi-day temperature fluctuations. Even during prolonged frosts, a stable microclimate was maintained inside, which was almost independent of the vagaries of the weather. Such a house consistently retained heat without requiring constant heating. A thick layer of soil acted as an energy accumulator, absorbing heat from the hearth in people's bodies during the day and releasing it at night. This allowed people to survive the harshest winters with surprising comfort. In such a house, the temperature never dropped below zero, even when a blizzard raged outside. A bitter frost set in, and a howling wind stripped the bare plains. The heat from the hearth, lamps, and the people themselves gradually permeated the walls, creating a heat trap effect. Even after the fire died down, the earth continued to radiate the accumulated heat back into the room for a long time. Thanks to this, it was possible to sleep inside without fear of freezing, covered with ordinary clothes and skins. People valued this property so much that they considered the earthen house to be a living being, capable of breathing and storing heat. The entrance to an earthen house was usually protected by a long corridor vestibule, which served as a buffer zone between the cold outside world and the warm interior. This corridor was low and narrow, sometimes partially buried in the ground, which enhanced insulation. It was hung with a heavy bison hide, which protected against the wind better than any door. This airlock prevented cold air from entering directly each time someone entered or exited. The temperature in the main room remained stable, unaffected by drafts. The vestibule was also a convenient place to store tools, firewood, and clothing. Several families, sometimes numbering a dozen people, could live inside such a dwelling at the same time, and their best horses could also be kept there. The presence of large animals provided an additional source of heat, working around the clock and completely free of charge. Horses gave off a huge amount of heat energy, and this greenhouse of living heat significantly increased the overall temperature in the dwelling. This approach combined convenience and pragmatism. The animals were protected from the cold, and the people were protected from excessively frosty nights. Living together strengthened the bonds within the community. Earth houses were often built partially or almost completely underground, which allowed the natural geothermal heat of the earth to be used. The deeper the floor was relative to the surface, the more stable the temperature was during the coldest months. The earth at depth maintained a small but constant positive temperature that prevented freezing. This made earthen houses much more efficient than any structures built on the surface. This solution was the result of thousands of years of experience living on the plains. The dome-shaped roof allowed snow to accumulate on top, creating an additional layer of natural insulation. In cold winter conditions, snow became an ally rather than an enemy. It compacted and created a layer that perfectly retained heat inside the dwelling. The thick snow caps sometimes reached a considerable thickness, turning the house into a kind of dugout covered with a soft white shell. This only improved the thermal insulation, especially at night. Snow, consisting of many air pockets, worked better as insulation than any material created by humans at that time. Such houses were so warm that people often walked around inside in light clothing, without feeling the fierce cold that reigned outside. It was a reliable shelter, capable of withstanding any winter on the windswept plains, where frost and wind could be merciless. The inhabitants felt protected, even when the door vestibule was buffeted by fierce winds. The thick walls made the dwelling quiet, creating an atmosphere of safety and homey warmth inside. Here, children played, women cooked, and men repaired weapons. Building such a house required the efforts of the entire community, from the youngest to the elders. Everyone participated. Men chopped logs, women wove floors from willow branches, and children carried turf and earth. It was a collective effort that strengthened bonds and created a sense of common purpose. The result justified the labor expended for decades to come, providing safety, comfort, and stability. The earthen house became the heart of the settlement and a symbol of strength in which people survived more than one winter. Are you ready for the shocking truth about why Native Americans rarely suffered from frostbite on their feet? Unlike European soldiers, it would seem that the harsh climate of the Great Plains would mercilessly punish anyone who dared to walk in the snow in light footwear. But the indigenous peoples knew much more about protecting their extremities than most armies of the Old World. They understood that the feet are the first weak point in cold weather, and their effectiveness depended on a delicate balance between warmth, dryness, and freedom of movement. Every decision was the result of centuries of observation of nature and their own bodies. Native Americans were well aware that heat loss through the extremities could be fatal in a matter of minutes, so they paid special attention to footwear. Winter moccasins were sewn with plenty of room so that the foot could move freely and blood could circulate. They knew that tight shoes disrupt blood circulation, which is the main reason for the rapid freezing of toes and feet. The free space inside made it possible to create an additional insulating layer that worked much better than thick but tight-fitting European shoes. A thick layer of dry grass, moss, or bison wool was placed inside the moccasin, carefully distributing the material around the entire foot. These natural insulators formed a soft air cushion that not only retained heat but also effectively absorbed excess moisture, which is inevitably released by the skin when walking. The idea was ingeniously simple. Dryness means warmth, and moisture is a direct path to frostbite. Therefore, the fibrous materials were changed regularly, without sparing supplies, because they were the first line of defense in the cold. If the grass got wet from sweat or snow, it was thrown away without regret and replaced with a fresh, dry portion, which was always kept on hand in special bags. This unpretentious but incredibly effective technology kept feet dry even during long treks. In conditions where the temperature could drop below the point at which metal broke, such flexibility in shoe care saved lives. It was a solution that did not require complex tools, but was based on a deep understanding of the properties of natural materials. Moccasins were made of soft smoked leather that did not harden in the cold, unlike stiff European boots, which turned into ice blocks. The dense but pliable leather allowed the foot to work actively with each step, massaging itself from the inside and stimulating blood flow. The soft sole allowed the foot to feel the ground, helped avoid slippery areas, and supported the natural rhythm of movement. All this increased heat production, keeping the feet in good condition even on long hikes. Winter moccasins often had a high upper that tied tightly around the calf, protecting against snow getting inside and keeping the upper part of the foot and ankles warm. Fur gaiters or leather leggings were worn over them, creating an additional barrier against the cold and piercing wind. This outfit worked no worse than modern thermal outfits, and sometimes even surpassed them, because natural fur retains heat much better than synthetics in strong winds. People usually slept without taking off their moccasins, but they always untied the laces to ensure maximum blood circulation. This allowed the feet to continue to breathe and circulate blood without restriction. Sometimes special, softer sleeping moccasins made from skins with the thickest fur inside were used for sleeping. They were not intended for walking, but provided maximum warmth during nighttime rest, becoming a kind of analog of winter socks. Hands were protected with mittens, which, unlike gloves, kept all fingers warm together, forming a single warm space. Mittens were sewn from durable skins and were often attached to a long cord around the neck or chest so that they could not be lost in deep snow. This saved people from countless misfortunes because losing just one mitten was enough to cause frostbite within a few hours and leave the hand unable to be warmed. Losing a mitten or moccasin in the winter steppe was equivalent to a death sentence, so this equipment was treated with great respect. Everyone knew how to quickly dry their shoes by the fire without burning the leather and replace wet insulation. These skills were passed down from childhood, became part of the culture, and were considered as important as the ability to shoot a bow or track bison. Without them, it was impossible to call yourself a true inhabitant of the plains. Europeans who wore tight leather boots and wool socks that could not be changed on the march often lost their toes to frostbite in the first weeks of their expeditions. The protection system used by the Indians was modular, adaptable, easily repairable, and perfectly suited to local conditions. It took into account the physics of movement, the properties of materials, and the biological characteristics of humans. That is why their feet remain warm, where the soldiers of the old world condemned themselves to suffering. Why do you think modern winter footwear manufacturers still use the principles laid down in the design of moccasins? In northern regions and during heavy snowfalls on the plains, indigenous peoples use snow itself as a building material, turning what kills the unprepared into reliable protection. For them, snow was not just precipitation, but a universal resource available wherever their travels took them. This was especially true for hunters, who could find themselves dozens of kilometers from their main camp when a storm began. At such moments, the decision to build or not to build a temporary shelter was a matter of life and death. That's when the technique of building snow shelters, known as queens, came in handy. These were surprisingly effective miniature houses created from winter itself. To build a quinzhee, a large pile of loose snow was raked together using hands, snowshoes, or whatever tools were available. When the pile reached the desired size, it was left for a while so that the snow would stick together and harden under its own weight. This compaction process transformed the loose mass into a solid structure that could support the weight of an adult. Then a space was carefully dug out inside the formed snowdrift, creating a rounded chamber. The thick snow walls acted as a shield against the wind and cold, trapping body heat in a small space. Even a few degrees of heat accumulated inside could be a lifesaver for a hunter spending the night. Snow consists of millions of tiny ice crystals with air between them. This combination creates a structure that is ideal for thermal insulation. The indigenous people understood perfectly well that snow, despite its coldness, works like a blanket if its thickness is used correctly. Even if the temperature outside the snow hut dropped to -50 degrees, inside it remained around 0 degrees. To an unprepared person, such a difference might seem insignificant, but to a freezing traveler, 0 degrees meant the difference between life and death. This proved how subtle the knowledge of nature was among those who lived in harmony with the winter lands. The entrance to such a shelter was made below floor level, carefully leveling the snow niche so that cold air would flow down and be pushed away from the interior space. Warm air, on the contrary, rose up to the place where a person lay or sat, creating a kind of heat trap. This natural separation of air layers functioned without any mechanisms. This technology was as important as the walls of the shelter themselves. Thanks to it, people could preserve precious degrees of heat, even when storms raged across the plains. Inside, a small ventilation hole was made in the ceiling by piercing the dome with a stick or bone. This hole served to allow fresh air to flow in and carbon dioxide, which accumulated when breathing in a confined space, to escape. The lack of ventilation was deadly, as a person could suffocate even in the presence of heat. Snow retained moisture, and without an outlet for steam, the shelter quickly became damp and cold. Therefore, experienced hunters always checked and, if necessary, enlarged the ventilation hole to maintain a stable microclimate. Such shelters were built quickly, using whatever was at hand. Snowshoes were turned into wide shovels, and flat, large animal bones became excellent tools for digging out the interior space. Practice and experience allowed the masters to build a life-saving shelter in less than an hour, which could be a decisive factor in a sudden storm. The indigenous people knew that there was no time to waste and that every minute could cost a life, so the construction process was perfected to the point of automatism. Sometimes, if the snow was not deep enough or too loose to form a solid pile, natural depressions in the ground, such as pits, ravines, or ditches, were used. These depressions were covered with branches, skins, or large logs, and then covered with a thick layer of snow on top. The result was a kind of snow den, protected from the biting wind, snow drifts, and rapid heat loss. Such shelters were less durable, but could save lives during a sudden cold snap or an overnight stay in the open steppe. Inside the Quincy, there was absolute silence, almost unreal compared to the roar of the blizzard outside. Snow has the amazing ability to muffle sounds, like soft cotton wool. For a hunter or traveler, this silence became a source of psychological relief, helping to cope with stress and fear of the elements. A person could hear their own breathing and heartbeat, which was calming and gave a sense of control over the situation. This state of comfort and security seemed almost magical against the backdrop of the raging chaos outside. Knowledge about building snow shelters was learned from northern neighbors, subarctic peoples such as the Cree and Athabascan. These peoples had perfected the technique of building both temporary and long-term snow dwellings over centuries. This wisdom was passed down through generations and spread among tribes across the continent. In conditions where the climate could be harsh and unpredictable, such knowledge became a common language of survival, which every tribe understood like a book. The ability to use the hostile elements to their advantage was the highest manifestation of human adaptation to nature. Snow, which symbolized danger and cold for Europeans, became a tool, a resource, and a protector for Native Americans. This art of survival demonstrated how deeply people understood the world around them and how they were able to turn weakness into strength. In the northeast of the continent, the Iroquois solved the problem of cold weather with the help of large communal dwellings called longhouses. These structures, made of bark and wood, could reach several dozen meters in length and accommodate an entire clan. Such a huge space was heated by a multitude of hearths located along the central axis of the house. But the main source of heat was the people themselves. One house could accommodate from 20 to 100 people. The human body at rest emits heat equivalent to approximately 100 watts of energy. When 50 people are in a confined space, they generate power comparable to a good modern heater. The sleeping places were located on platforms along the walls, raised above the ground, where the air was warmer. People slept in groups, huddled close together under shared fur blankets. This practice of sleeping together was not just a tradition, but a necessary measure to preserve heat during the harsh winters. Their bodies warmed each other, creating a single thermal circuit that was much easier to maintain. The space under the sleeping platforms was used to store firewood and supplies, which provided additional insulation from the walls. The elm bark used to cover the houses also had good thermal insulation properties. In a longhouse, someone was always awake, watching the fire and the condition of the dwelling, which increased overall safety. Those on duty kept the hearths at the minimum necessary level, saving firewood. In winter, all the cracks in the walls were carefully caulked with moss and clay, turning the house into an airtight fortress. The entrances were covered with several layers of skins, creating reliable barriers against the cold. The social structure of the Iroquois was ideally suited to the demands of survival in a cold climate. Collectivism and mutual aid were not abstract concepts, but a physical condition for the preservation of life. Life in a longhouse required a high degree of tolerance and discipline, but in return provided warmth and protection. The choice of a place for winter quarters was as important as the quality of housing or clothing. Nomadic tribes never wintered on the open, windswept highlands of the plains. As the cold weather approached, they descended into deep river valleys covered with forests and shrubs. The high banks of the rivers served as a natural barrier, protecting the camp from the fierce winter winds. The trees in the valleys not only slowed down the wind, but also provided fuel for fires. Dry wood and driftwood washed up by the river were much more accessible here than in the open steppe. In addition, the wooded river floodplains were home to animals such as deer and elk, which served as a source of fresh meat. Wintering near resources minimized the need for long journeys through deep snow. The camp was set up so that the tipis faced east and had their backs to the prevailing winds. This reduced heat loss and prevented smoke from blowing back into the dwellings. The arrangement of the dwellings in a circle or semicircle also provided additional aerodynamic protection for the central area. Neighboring tipis covered each other, creating a milder microclimate inside the camp. The Indians knew how to read the landscape, noticing places where the snow melted faster or where the wind did not pile up snowdrifts. These micro-signs told them the ideal spots to set up camp. Sometimes, for additional protection, woven screens made of willow or branches were erected around the tipis. Such fences retained snow and reduced wind speed at ground level. The right choice of location could raise the temperature in the camp by several degrees compared to open terrain. It was a strategy of using geography itself as part of the heating system. Generations of experience allowed them to unerringly find safe havens in the ocean of winter plains. Survival in the cold depended not only on material technology, but also on psychological preparation and hardening. From an early age, children were taught not to fear the cold and to accept it as a natural part of life. Morning swims in the icy river water were common practice for men and young warriors. This strengthened their immunity, trained their blood vessels, and taught their bodies to quickly mobilize resources for warmth. The ability to endure discomfort and not panic when hypothermic was an essential character trait. Panic in the cold leads to irrational actions, sweating, and rapid death. People learn to control their breathing and muscle tension to minimize heat loss. A relaxed body helps conserve energy better than constant tension and shivering. Social support played a huge role. In the cramped confines of a winter dwelling, depression and despondency were dangerous for everyone. Storytelling, games, and conversation helped maintain high morale during the long winter evenings. Confidence in their skills and equipment provided the peace of mind necessary for survival. Native Americans knew they could make fire, build shelter, and find food in any conditions. This mental fortitude was the backbone that allowed the system to function effectively. Without strength of spirit, even the warmest furs and the best tipis would not have saved the people. Adaptation to the cold took place on a physiological level. Studies show that indigenous peoples had a different metabolic response to cold. Their bodies learned to redistribute blood flow more efficiently, protecting their internal organs. Thus, survival was the result of harmony between body, spirit, and environment. It was a philosophy of life where man did not fight nature, but became part of it. The cold was not an enemy, but a strict teacher who punished mistakes and rewarded wisdom. We see that the ability of Native Americans to sleep warm without modern technology was the result of a deep understanding of nature. It was not magic or chance. It was a rigorous system of knowledge honed by centuries of trial and error. Heat-retaining materials, architectural solutions, special diets, and social practices all worked as a single mechanism. They proved that comfort is not always a matter of technology, but often a matter of ingenuity and the ability to use available resources. Their experience reminds us that humans are capable of adapting to the most extreme conditions if they live in harmony with the world around them. Which of these ancient technologies did you find most surprising? The internal furnace on a fat diet, or the engineering trick with the insert in the tipi? Suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories about survival in the past.